All right, this class is being recorded. Today is Monday, January 29th, 2 p.m. section. Today, what we're going to do primarily is go through lecture note 1, start that. So basically, if you go to Elms and you go to Files and you go to Lecture Notes, you'll want to grab lecture note 1. Okay. Now, before we get into lecture note 1, just a couple of things. Number 1, the serial numbers for Bloomberg have been reinstalled in these machines. So if you haven't already, you need to create your account for Bloomberg, not only to follow along in class, but also to make sure you're able to do homework 1. Okay. So again, in order to do that, in Bloomberg, on the screen, there should be an icon that looks like this. All right, make sure you click on that icon to load the terminal on one of these computers. Again, there's not enough to go around, so you'll have to share. So when you go to the screen the first time, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's an option that says create a new account, I believe it says. Does that sound right? Is everybody there yet? What does it say? I can see it on his screen. Sorry, I'm just trying to stay logged in. What does it say in the bottom left-hand corner? Create a new login. Thank you. So click on create a new login. It'll bring you to a screen that says I'm creating it for myself and that I don't previously have a Bloomberg account. Hit next. On the next screen, you'll need to put in an account name that's unique. Again, mine is J. Perfetti. It's not an email address. Once you select that, it'll ask you to put in either a phone number and or an email address. You'll then select that. You'll choose which of the two it sends a code to. You'll take the code that you just got at the email or text message. You'll type it in. It'll bring you back to a screen, choose a password, and that's it. You have an account. Okay? So again, if you haven't done that, you can do that right now. It should take, again, about 3 total minutes to complete the process. All right. So that's how you get a Bloomberg account. The other thing you need to do is start your Bloomberg certification. Now, we talked about this briefly last Wednesday, so I'm going to do a reminder right now on the certification. So under assignments, there's an assignment called Bloomberg certification. Again, you must complete the certification by Friday, February 9th. This is 5% of your semester grade. And I apologize, I'm being rude and I'm interrupting the students' ability to talk in the class. So I'm just going to wait until they're done so that I can actually proceed. Because I don't want to be rude and interrupt them. Okay, so for the certification, there are 4 modules that you need to complete: economic indicators, currency, fixed income equities. To get to the BMC certification, I'd recommend doing it on their website. You don't need the terminal to do this. Again, this is the link. It should take you approximately 8 hours to complete the certification over the next 3 weeks. You don't have to do it all at once. The first time you go to the Bloomberg for Education website, which is where you'll take the certification, you will sign up. When you sign up, very important, use a umd.edu email address. If you don't use a umd.edu email address, it's going to charge you $149. If you use a UMD, it will be free. So use one of your 2 email addresses, put it in, select, or it should automatically show you, the University of Maryland. Choose a password, type in your name, say you're not a robot, hit sign up. It will then bring you to a second screen. It will give you 3 options for how you want to pay. If you put in a umd.edu email address, the second screen will show you 0 as the cost for the student option. If you don't use a UMD email, it will charge you $149. Okay, so please use a UMD account. Once you then hit yes, you'll have an account, and then you can log in. When you log in, and very important, this is an email login. Your Bloomberg account is not an email login. They're two separate accounts. Okay? Don't get confused by that. When you get to the screen that you've logged into the online portal for Bloomberg for Education, across the top, certificates. Click on certificates. There are 3. The one you want to take, Bloomberg Market Concepts, aka BMC. It will remember where you were, so you can take this, stop, come back. But basically, the modules, as you scroll down, are right here. They all have blue badges next to them. These are the 4 required modules. Notice 3 of them say new version. So unless you took this last semester, I'm not accepting previous certifications. You'll have to retake it because the versions have been updated. Okay? So basically, there's 7 total modules, 4 required with the blue badges, 3 are optional. You don't need to do the other 3. However, one of the optional modules is called Terminal Basics. And again, the software has a very steep learning curve. So I strongly recommend doing Terminal Basics just to learn how to use the software, right? But that being said, these are the 4 required modules. You'll notice one says currencies. We're not covering currencies in this class, but this is a real certification, and you need those 4 to do the certification. When you start a module, these are the subtopics. Hit resume. Each of the modules will have a video,
the customary way to measure
plus,
the
which you have to
size
watch,
and performance of any
plus some text you'll have to
economy
read,
is
and then
through
it'll have some
gross
questions,
domestic
mostly multiple
product, or
choice.
GDP.
Very
GDP
important.
therefore provides the
You have to
backdrop.
get 70% or greater correct on the questions for each of the modules. If you don't, I don't consider you certified, and there's no partial credit. So if you get 3 70% and 1 under 70%, you still get a 0. You're not certified as far as I'm concerned. Bloomberg will consider you certified, but I will not. You can only take the questions in each module 1 time. Once you answer them, it won't let you re-answer them, and it won't let you change your score. So if you get below 70%, you can't retake the test. If you are in that situation, your only option is to create a brand new account. Hence why I told you your 2 UMD email addresses become very important. Because if you screw up the first one, you still got to back up as the second one. If you screw up both of those, well, you're either going to pay $149 or you have to convince one of your friends to let you borrow their email address, okay? But basically, 1 time per account to take the questions. Yes, sir?
Does it factor in the knowledge checks, or is it just the section quiz questions?
It's just the section that you were in. But I will warn you, as I did last week, it's ticky-tack, all right? The whole point is, you just watched a video. In minute 3 of the video, we said this. What did we say? Like, those are the questions. So I'm telling you, if you don't watch the videos, you have no idea how to answer the questions. You will not pass the test. I've tried. I've had students try. So the only way you can pass the test is you have to watch the videos. But if you watch the videos, it's pretty easy. But that's the point. Like, Bloomberg wants you to watch the videos. That's why they set the test up this way. Yes? So another hand? Yeah.
Coach, can say any of the questions in the specific module count towards the 70%?
Every module in the questions, in every question in the module is part of the 70% per module.
Yeah.
Yes. So you got to get them all, 70% or greater. Now, when you have finished a module, on this original screen, it will then, right next to this blue badge, it will then put a percentage. And that percentage is your percentage score. That's what you're going to submit. So for submission, you need to probably minimize your browser slightly so that all 4 show up, and you'll see 4 scores. Take that screenshot, submit that screenshot by Friday, February 9th. If you're in the situation where you didn't pass one of the 4 and you had to create a second account, you don't have to take the ones you passed over again in the second account. You only have to take the one you failed over again. So think of your submission as 2 screenshots. Here's the screenshot with the 3 modules I passed. Here's the one that I retook, all showing greater than 70%. If you submit a screenshot with less than 70% and there's no other screenshot, you're going to get a 0. You have to do all 4 and you have to get 70%. By the way, that is a higher standard than Bloomberg uses. Bloomberg will give you the certificate with a lot lower than 70%. But that's not the standard I'm using. I want you to know how to use the terminals. Okay? Questions? All right, so make sure you get your account. Make sure you start the certification. You got 2.5 weeks to do it. All right? Finally, there is a second way to take the certification. I don't recommend it, but you can do it. in the Bloomberg account itself, when you're logged into a terminal, you can type BMC and it will bring you to the certification area. Okay? You can log in with the same email address, it's a second account, through the actual terminal and take it in this lab. But you'd have to take 8 hours in this lab, which I wouldn't recommend. You do it on the portal, you can do it at home, and it doesn't require the terminal. That's what I'd recommend. Okay? Questions about certification? Question about your login? Yes?
So, like, if it says new version available on the one you had, like, you're not counting that?
Nope. You gotta do the whole thing again. So I've had some people said, I got certified 2 years ago. Great, you're gonna get certified again. New versions. Once you keep up with the latest stuff they have. Other questions? All right, so back to lecture note 1. The lecture notes are kind of based on the book, but go beyond the book. I'm assuming you have the book, you've read the book. Now, if you don't want to buy the book, you don't want to read the book, it's your choice. But I'm assuming you've read it. I'm assuming you absorbed all that content. I'm not covering what's in the book. I'm going beyond. And we're going to be doing a lot of practical in-class stuff that assumes you know that stuff. So if you do have the book and you don't understand something, please ask. All right, no questions, dumb question in class. The dumb questions are when you get to the midterm and you have no idea how to answer the question. That's the dumb question, right? So make sure you have questions. I'm assuming you've read the book. I'm building on in the lecture notes, but a lot of what we do in this class is even beyond the lecture notes. It's going to be very applied using real world stuff, hence the nature of using Bloomberg. All right, but it's all going to be tested. Your assignments will require Bloomberg and real world data. Your midterm and final are based on multiple choice assessment of do you understand the content, which will include the book. Just letting you know. All right, so speaking of the book, 7th edition, don't get a previous edition. All right, this class is based on value creation. So I'm going to start with a generic definition of value creation. Creating value is about exceeding expectations. Right? You should always know what somebody's expectations are. Right? That's how you know you're going to do a good job. In the finance world, this is unique beyond finance, expectations are going to involve typically metrics. And so we're going to understand, are we exceeding specific metrics, value creation, hurdle rates, cost of capital. Okay? So that is what value creation is ultimately about. The book talks about value creation. So the book, Valuation by McKinsey, is a Bible. Okay? If you are a practitioner in the real world, you've read this book, it's on a bookshelf. Okay? This stuff is very much applicable to the real world. Because what McKinsey did is they're in 1,000 boardrooms, and they said, okay, what of the academic content is most relevant to the real world? And that was the basis of which they wrote the original book. And they've updated over the last 15, 20 years. Now we're in the 7th edition. But nonetheless, this is very good practical stuff. But I will also tell you that this is unique, meaning there's some stuff in there in their terminology that you're going to go to other finance professors, they'll be like, I've never heard of this before. Okay? And so it doesn't mean it's not valid or is valid. It's just, it is a McKinsey-based approach. The real world uses it. As a textbook, the textbook is not real, it's not used as a textbook. It's a practitioner's guide. There's only 2 schools I'm aware of that use the valuation book as a textbook. Us and Wharton. That's it. Okay? Wharton does it because one of the authors, Dave Wessels, friend of mine, basically said, I'm going to teach it to all the Wharton MBAs because I wrote the textbook. I was one of the contributing authors at McKinsey. Right? I teach it here because I used to teach in the McKinsey Analyst Training Program back in the day. So I got exposed to their stuff, and I was like, wow, this is better than any textbook I've ever read, including DeMotorin. So this is good stuff, put it that way. That's what we're going to use this semester. What the book is based on is what McKinsey calls the 4 cornerstones. They've taken the academic content, and they said, look, these are the 4 most important themes that are important to real investors. Okay? What are they? Okay? So one of the themes we're going to talk about this semester is the concept of what's called spread. Right? It's based on NPV. To have a positive NPV, you have to have an IRR greater than your R. Well, in the real world, same concept applies. It's just we're going to use ROIC, return on invested capital, which is a 1-period IRR. That's all ROIC is. But the whole idea is over time, your ROIC has to be greater than your hurdle rate. Otherwise, you can't create value. Just like your IRR over time has to be greater than your R, or you can't have a positive NPV. It's basically just taking that and putting it into the real world, right? The only difference is McKinsey shows that that's actually how companies get really valued in the real world, because these percentages are a shortcut for cash flow. As I will demonstrate to you later this week, ROIC is a proxy for cash flow. It's a proxy for free cash flow. So if you make a 6% ROIC, you're generating 6 cents per dollar of investment. If you're borrowing at a WACC of 8%, you have to pay back 8 cents per dollar of investment. 6 cents doesn't pay back 8 cents. Okay? So that's why you can't create value. That leads to how we score, but more importantly, 2 follow-up concepts. Concept number 1, growth does not create value. I'll say that one again. Growth does not create value, right? Here's my point. If you're borrowing at 8% and you invest and you make 6%, doing more of that just makes the situation worse. If you can borrow at 8%, invest and make 16%, I want to do that all day long. Growth is the accelerant to value. And there's good growth and there's bad growth. And what matters is the growth return combination. Actually, what matters is the growth spread combination. Growing a positive spread creates a lot of value. Growing a negative spread destroys a lot of value. It's like throwing, as I said, positive spread, step on the gas, negative spread, step on the brake. We will get into the math later this week, but that's what the math tells you. So growth is the accelerant to value. And a lot of people forget about this. I was explaining to the classes earlier today. Over the weekend, I had nothing to do, so I watched this movie called Dumb Money, right? Dumb movie about dumb money, right? I was thinking even in the dumb movie about dumb money, they'd actually explain what really happened with Robinhood and what really happened with GameStop, but it was too stupid to even do that. So I don't even know why they made this movie. But regardless, I sat through the whole 2 hours, hoping that maybe I'd learn something. Anyhow, the point is, at one point in the movie, they had a reporter asking the 2 founders of Robinhood, like, how do you make money? If all the trades are free on Robinhood, how are you making money? And his answer was, well, we're just growing really fast. And I was thinking, no wonder why this is called dumb money. These are billionaires at the time. Like, they're just thinking that a lot of growth equals value? No, like no sophisticated investor is going to just pay for growth in and of itself if it doesn't make money. By the way, as the follow-up, he said, well, what we don't really tell our users is we have an arrangement with a hedge fund, and we take your trades and we give it to them at a discount, and they fill them at higher prices, and that's actually how we make money, but we don't tell anybody at Robinhood that we're doing this. So that's true, by the way. So, but anyways, so they weren't actually doing it for free, but they just didn't want you to think it was for free. They charge you in a different way. But that's not this class. The whole point is you got to make money eventually. Right? You got to have a positive spread. If you can't have a positive spread, you can't just grow your way into valuation. Like take, the companies right now that aren't doing so well, like a DoorDash or an Instacart or an Uber with Uber Eats. All these delivery services are just losing lots of money. It costs them more to deliver food to your house than you are paying them for that privilege to do so. They're just hoping that they'll get to a scale one day where it will flip, right? But I'm also telling you that if it costs them $1.30 to deliver food that they're getting paid $1 for, how do they actually get the money to do that? How do all these delivery services, which are losing money in every transaction, where does the money come from to actually deliver the food if they're losing money in every transaction to your house? If it costs me $1.30 to deliver food and I'm only getting paid $1, where's the 30 cents coming from? Yeah. Yeah, from investors. The investors are giving them money to basically lose money in every transaction. Now, do you think these investors are stupid? Like, are they just going to scale up and keep giving them billions and billions with no hope of getting the money back? Like, there's a bet. And the bet is that at one point it's going to flip. And that these companies are actually going to make more than it costs them to deliver. They're not there yet, but they think that they're going to scale up to that point. And the investors are willing to make that bet. But I'm also telling you, these companies are very dangerous to own. Because if investors start to think that these companies can't flip it and they stop writing checks, these companies are going to go under very, very quickly. Okay? But that's the whole point of the cornerstone. It's eventually you got to have a positive spread in anything that you do. All right? That's what value creation is all about. That's going to be one of the metrics that we use. Second point, 50% of your spread is your industry. Your industry is more important than your company, says Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett's like 90-something years old. His partner, long time at Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, just passed away in the last month or so. And he's trying to basically, show his wisdom of how he did so well over the last 50 years. He's like, look, I've been telling you all along, says Warren Buffett. I don't invest in companies. I invest in industries. Because if I fall in love with a company in a bad business, there's nothing they can do. If I have a company in a great industry, even a mediocre company can make money. So his investment philosophy for 50 years, start with the industry, the attractive, preferably enduring industry, then pick the company who's going to win in that order. And that's a philosophy we'll use as we analyze companies, even under the EIC framework. Start with the industry. Some industries are more attractive than others, and it just so happens that you have a tool called Bloomberg, which is the only tool in the world that can show you real-time industry performance. Nothing else does it. It's actually one of the reasons why it's such a powerful tool for publicly traded data. Now, if you have private companies, it won't show you this, but for the big publicly traded companies, it will give you industry averages, and that is your homework assignment. So, back to Bloomberg. Now that you have an account, you have logged in, I used this example last week, I'll use it again, Netflix. So start typing in Netflix if you want to follow along. Select Netflix.US equity. And I told you that one of the nice features of Bloomberg, Netflix is up 263 today, good job. RV, relative valuation. Okay, so RV is real-time benchmarking. So again, what it's going to do is it's going to get default peer lists. Now, where it says comp source, there are two. The analyst curated ones, literally Bloomberg will hire former sell-side analysts to basically come in, work for them, and say, okay, you're going to cover these industries and give research on these industries by basically aggregating what all the other people say and what companies do they look at by default. The analyst will actually pick a default list. Now, you can edit this list to your heart's content, but if you're just looking at like who's a default peer list, it's a good place to start. The second one is they have an algorithm where BICS stands for Bloomberg Industry Classification Service. So Bloomberg will literally put every company into a classification, kind of like GICS. It's their own proprietary one. And the algorithm will just say who's in the group, like who are Netflix peers. But again, whatever list you choose, and there's different lists. For your homework assignment, you got to choose one of the two. For most of your homeworks, I'll tell you which list if I want you to use a specific list to use. You click on this little pencil button. This is where you can edit the list. All right, so let's say I want to put another company onto this list. I just add the security, hit enter, it'll add it to the list. If I want to get rid of a company in the list, circle red X, click on it, it will drop off. And then it will create a custom list. And you can look at your own custom list. So again, what a lot of the banks will do is they'll start with a default list and they'll just edit it to be the one they want to specifically look at for the team that we're covering. Or if I'm in investor relations, I'll look at the peers that I want to benchmark against, but it's at least a good place to start. All right. So you're looking at Netflix. Second thing is you want to have your list looking like my list. So up here at the top, once you're in the RV screen, settings, global settings. These global settings are unique to your individual account, okay? So there are two things that you're going to change. When you first log in, the default account makes this screen look like this. Okay, that's what you're going to see, all right? Now, I don't like, as I told you last week, I don't like this middle bar. I think it just wastes a lot of space, and I want to see the lists. So I'm going to try and get rid of the middle bar. If you want to keep the middle bar, you can have the middle bar, but I'm going to show you how to get rid of the middle bar. And then secondly, you'll notice that it doesn't have an average. It just lists the companies. So under global settings, two settings. Setting number one, uncheck show top section. That gets rid of the middle bar. Setting number two, where it says stats, check market cap weighted average. Now you can check more than one statistic, but that's the one that you need is market cap weighted average. You want this in the global settings. When you hit close, it'll apply it. So that every time you go to the RV screen, the very first row will be the market cap weighted average. And I don't want you to use the regular average because the regular average will distort it. So some tiny company that has like a gigantic gain or loss will distort your industry. So this will adjust by size. They use market cap. Okay? So this is, again, the cool feature of Bloomberg. This is what I mean by you're getting real-time industry averages here. And there aren't other tools that do this. And this is a very powerful feature of Bloomberg. Now, it has all these default templates, but over here on the right is custom. And this is where you'll create your custom template, okay, which is part of your assignment. So under the custom template, you can look up any data point that you want and benchmark against that. Where it says add column is where you can search for or use the data. So in this case, we're going to search for ROIC, R-O-I-C, and it's going to show me, okay, do you want return on invested capital? Yes, we do. So we're going to click on that, and then it's going to ask us which one do we want, okay? And we're going to want the one as of the latest filing, LF. That means if Netflix, which they have, reported their results last week, that will go through December 2023. If they haven't reported results, it'll go through September 2023, but the day they report, it'll switch to the latest filing data, annualized for the last 4 quarters. Okay, so it's a rolling 4 quarters as of the latest filing. If you choose latest quarter, it's just that, the 3 months for the latest report. If you choose latest year, it's the last reported 12-month fiscal year of the company. If you do calendar year, some companies don't report on January 1st, so it'll try to normalize based in December. You can also do a customized period. So if I want to see the ROIC from like 3 years ago, I could click on Y minus 3, right? Or Y plus 1 for next year's forecast. A lot of slicing and dicing you can do on here, all right? But for our purposes, we're going to start latest filing. You're going to select it, and you're going to hit enter. And what's going to do is it's going to take the average of all 5 of those companies, adjusted for size. It's going to give you the average for the industry ROIC, and then each company's ROIC for the last year. We're then going to add another column called the WACC, weighted average cost of capital. Now, unfortunately, in the benchmarking screen, RV, Bloomberg only gives you one WACC, the current WACC. It doesn't allow you to look at historical WACCs on this screen. You can get it elsewhere in the tool, but you can't get it on this screen. So it's going to be the current WACC. Top row, industry average, and then each of the companies thereafter. Okay. So finally, because you're going to use this template a lot, you're going to want to save the template. So that's one click to reuse it. Now across this bar where it says create template, yours is going to be blank. Okay, you got a generic account. So what you're going to do is once you create this template, you click on this gear over here and you save as a template. You can then have up to 11 characters as a quick reference to the save template that you just made. Okay, so then once you type in your name, hit save, and it will basically put it on this menu bar. So that way, if I want to load a template, I just click one click, and whatever company I am on, it will load that previously saved templates data. All right. So again, as you use the tool over the course of the semester, you'll start creating further templates. Like for example, I did another template that's called last year's spread, which looked at the ROIC from 2 and 3 years back. Because I wanted to see how the ROIC was changing between the 2 years ago and last year. Okay, so again, you can kind of create different versions of the templates, but that was just another template I happened to create. All right, this is the one that you need for your homework assignment. So, interpreting data. In this class, an industry that creates value has a positive spread. In this class, an industry that destroys value has a negative spread. Okay? So as we go through EIC, one of the questions is this a value creating or a value destroying industry? Does this industry create value? What's the answer based on this data? Yes, sir.
Oh, it doesn't
Okay, so he gave a very correct answer, but per the syllabus, the TA would give him a 0 on the assignment. Why?
Oh, so I didn't use data?
You got to use numbers. So I'll give you a second shot.
So the WAC of 10.13% is higher than the ROIC of 9.4%?
And that's why it's creating value. There you go. There's a good answer, 2 points. But you got to use numbers. Yes? What he said was that the WAC of 10.13 is higher than the ROIC of 9.4, and that's why the industry is not creating value. And this was a good example, and I don't want to call this person out, but in the last class, I had them do the same thing. I said, use numbers. And this is what this poor woman said. She said, well, I don't understand because Netflix is creating value. This industry has an 11.58% WAC and a 16.32% ROIC. She actually said that. Now, is that right or wrong? She's talking about Netflix, not the industry. And that's what I mean. Like, you can look at the wrong data and get the right answer. You can also look at the wrong data, the wrong answer. She happened to get that. But that's actually why I want you to use numbers. Because there was a student who just misunderstood what I said and was looking at the wrong information. That's another reason why it's important to use data. Because if you're using data, we know what you're looking at and we know what you're saying. If you don't use data, you could be looking at the wrong thing and get it right. That doesn't mean that you understand it. Got to use both. Make sense? Okay. In this class, yes?
How did you change to adjust for the weighted average?
How did I change?
For me, it's coming up as median.
So under settings, global settings, make sure you check market cap weighted average. There's a box down there, bottom left of the screen. Make sure that's checked. And then hit close. It'll pop it up there. All right, second thing, and as I told the previous classes, I'm going to say something very dangerous. So I'm just telling you, if I accidentally cross the line in what I say, I apologize to you. Because I know I'm not allowed to say what I'm about to say. So I'm not going to say it, but if I accidentally say it, I apologize, okay? But here's the idea. If you're at the University of Maryland Smith School, you are in a top 25 program in the United States for business schools, right? Which means if you're in this school, you're pretty dang smart. You gotta be in order to get it. There's 4,000 universities, you're top 25, all right? So you're good, right? If you've made it this far as a finance or accounting major, you also gotta be pretty smart, okay? You didn't drop out. You had to pass a bunch of classes to get to this class. So you're pretty smart. You're at a top school in the world, and you're actually in a top program, and you're actually in a class that says you had to, as a finance accounting major, do pretty well to get in this room. However, by definition, 50% of the students in this class are below average. Okay, there's the dangerous part. And I'm not going to label you as a below average student, right? Because I don't want you to go home crying or have to see some psychiatrist or something else that says, Professor Perfetti called me a below average student. But mathematically, 50% of you are below average relative to the people in the room because you're an above average cohort. That is the way we're going to look at competitive advantage in the real world, okay? Just because you have a positive spread doesn't mean you have competitive advantage. You might be in a good industry. That doesn't mean you're a great company. Great companies outperform. So competitive advantage in this class is relative, okay? Which means we're going to use an absolute definition for value creation. Positive spread, negative spread. It's very absolute. We're going to use a relative definition for competitive advantage. Your spread must be better than the industry average, or you're not demonstrating competitive advantage. Everybody see that? Does Netflix demonstrate competitive advantage? Yes or no? Go ahead.
It does.
Because?
Well, to begin, as demonstrated, the industry average shows that the weighted average cost of capital is greater than the return on investment of capital by approximately 47%.
Okay.
And Netflix and ROIC is visibly much higher than the weighted average cost of capital by more than 4%. So thus there it shows that it's better than the industry average.
Okay, so I'd say that's a good answer. For purposes of grading, you'd get a 1.5 out of 2. Okay, he basically said because the spread, which he labeled at Netflix, which is a positive, rounded off 4%, is greater than the industry spread, which is a negative 0.7%. It's demonstrating competitive advantage. What would have been the 2.0 answer is that Netflix, which has an ROIC of 6.32 against a WACC of 11.58, which represents approximately a 4-point spread, is greater than the industry of 9.4 against 10.13, which is a negative 0.7% spread. So I do want you to get in the habit of using the numbers, not just the sums. Okay? But otherwise, he had exactly right. This would show competitive advantage. Yes, sir.
When we're giving like that kind of answer, do you need us to be like very precise?
You can round,
Okay.
but you got to give the right rounding. And I don't know where somebody said you always round down in answers, but that's not math. Like if it's under 0.5, you can round down. But if it's 0.5 or over, you round up. Like rounding means rounding. I just say this because there's some professor here that says you always round down. And I've had people do that. So I just want to make sure that's not you. Yes?
When you're dealing with like values that are derived, how like granular should you get when you're explaining this?
Well, I just told you. 9.4 against 10.13. That's as granular as you got to get.
Okay.
But you got to say the numbers that you see on the screen. Okay? And you got to do that in your presentations, by the way, as well. So here's another question. Is there somebody else in this industry that's demonstrating competitive advantage? Is anybody else in this industry demonstrating competitive advantage besides Netflix?
Fox Corp
Why?
demonstrating competitive advantage because their ROC at 1.21% is greater than their WACC of 6.87% by about 2.5%.
Okay.
And the industry average ROIC is at 9.4%, and the industry average WACC is at 10.13%, which would have a spread, industry average spread of negative 7%.
Good job. Exactly the right answer. So I want to illustrate 2 points here. Number one, more than one company can have competitive advantage using our definition. Right? And in this case, even though Fox has an ROIC less than the industry average, Fox also has a much lower cost of capital. So they still have a positive spread. And our definition is based on spread, not based on ROIC. Second point, can a company with a negative spread have competitive advantage? Using the definition I gave you. Can a company with a negative spread have competitive advantage? Yes or no? Yes. Basically, you have a negative spread, which is less negative than the industry average spread. You're losing value. You just don't suck as much as somebody else. And so that's still better. Okay? Matter of fact, the opposite can be true. You can create value. You can have a big positive spread, but under the industry average, create value, but not have competitive advantage. So those two circumstances can exist as well. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. For your homework assignment, you need to find an industry, which is market cap weighted average, with a negative spread. Now, if you want to use this one, I'm good. Because the point of the homework one, easy 2 points, is to make sure that you got an account, you got to the screen, you knew how to create the template, and you knew how to export it to submit. If you did that, you're making progress. That's worth 2 points. This is the easiest assignment the entire semester. Trust me, the complexity goes way up from here. All right, so how do I export the graphic one last time? Top right of the screen, there is an export button, triangle with a green arrow coming out. Click on that, take screenshot, save the screenshot. It'll save it as a GIF file, image, and you name it whatever you want. Call it Netflix, Netflix spread, Netflix RV, whatever you want to do it. Save it, and then you'll either put it on that computer. If you got access to your login, you might have a network drive, you got a thumb drive, but you need to save that file, you got to upload that screenshot. Option B, under export, take screenshot, send via MSG. MSG stands for message. When you create a Bloomberg account, Bloomberg actually gives you a Bloomberg email. I forgot if it's bloomberg.net or bloomberg.com. But your account comes with a Bloomberg email. Whatever your account name is, jperfetti@bloomberg.net or .com, right? I don't really use it, but you can. So that's the point. With your Bloomberg account, send message, you can basically email this image, screenshot, to your personal email address. So send this to perfetti@umd.edu. It'll come as an email. Okay? So if you can't figure out how to save it, you can email it to yourself. That's option number 2. Yes?
So if you repeat the screenshot stuff.
So again, on the last screen, and this is any screen in Bloomberg, by the way. So there's all the emails I don't read. Oh, let's go back to here. All right, so on any screen in Bloomberg, you'll notice that top row didn't change. In this upper right-hand corner, take screenshot, save. Or view screen as image, file, save as in some browser or whatever that's extra complicated, but basically save as image, it'll save as a GIF, which is perfectly fine for a submission. Yes?
Is your screen already recorded that we can view?
We are recording this.
We can see the stuff that you're doing on the screen.
Yes, everything on the screen is being recorded. So, other questions? Yes?
Is there a time frame when they get wiped out from these computers?
They're not supposed to, but apparently IT is doing that every semester. So we should be good throughout the semester. And they know that it was wiped out, and they went through a lot of trouble to put it back in. So I don't think they're going to want to do that again.
No, I mean like the screenshots. Are they going to get like wiped out at the end of every week?
Oh yeah, anytime you close out the machine, it wipes out the local data. So as soon as you log out, it'll get wiped out. So if you need data, make sure you take it. By the way, not doing this for this assignment, and I'm not on that exact same screen, but the other option next to settings is export. You can export any of this data to Excel. So let's say I want to take the data outside the lab and bring it home with me, export to Excel, save the Excel file, bring the Excel file with you. You can bring the data, okay? Just don't post it on the web. Bloomberg does not like when their data shows up on the web, which is they charge $25,000 for, and you set it out there for free. So just don't do that. But for personal use, you're welcome to take it home. And you will need to do that for some of your assignments. Yes? This assignment is just a screenshot. There's no write-up. That's what I said. This is as easy as it's going to get. It will get harder. So you want to do Netflix? You can do Netflix. But we're going to look at a few companies. So I'm going to go back to custom, which I got out of the screen. I'm going to go back to the template that we just built. And as I mentioned last week, give me another company. Another company, another business. Anybody? Yeah. Boeing. So you take the second row in yellow, and you replace Netflix with Boeing, and same thing's about to happen. It's going to load the default peer list for Boeing, and it's going to upload it with their most recent data for them and their peers, real-time benchmarking. So if we load in Boeing, I need like a music in the background while we're waiting. All right, so is Boeing in? And I'm going to suspend the rules temporarily so you don't have to use numbers temporarily. Okay. Is Boeing in an attractive industry? Yes or no? No. Because the ROIC of 784 is less than the WACC of 8. Is Boeing creating value? Do they demonstrate competitive advantage? Clearly not. Negative 6.67 against a 9% WACC. They're screwing up in a bad industry. What about Lockheed Martin? Are they demonstrating competitive advantage? I mean, they're the gold star of the industry. I mean, they got a 24.5% ROIC against a 7.36% WACC. They're creating value, and they're outperforming just about everybody in the industry. Okay. By the way, as we go through EIC, why? Why is this industry so much worse than the last industry, Netflix? And why is Lockheed Martin overperforming in a bad industry? Like, there should be answers to those questions. That's the whole point of where we're going with this with EIC. Okay? We should be explaining the industry. We should be explaining the company. Now, when we look, give me somebody else. Who else do we want to look at? Yeah? DraftKings. So online gambling. And by the way, this is the type of stuff you should be thinking about when you're doing your Bloomberg Trading Challenge, which starts on Wednesday. Okay. So how does online gambling look? Right now, not creating value. And right now, DraftKings is losing 41 cents per dollar. Now, if they offer you, I saw the game yesterday. Like, if you bet $5, they'll give you like 150 for free. Like, That's not a recipe for growth that's profitable in the short term. All right, they're trying to get you on the site, get you hooked into gambling so that they're going to make money off of you later. And right now, that's the way this industry is being represented. This is not about today. They're just trying to get the addicts of tomorrow. Okay? But that being said, you can see different parts of the industry. Tougher industry. All right. Anybody else you want to look at real quick? NVIDIA. So this would basically be semiconductors. Okay, so Intel should be on this list, NVIDIA, TI. Give it a second. Is this an attractive industry? Very. How's NVIDIA doing? They're showing competitive advantage in a very attractive industry. And that's the point. With the one exception of Marvell Technology, that's not Marvel the movies, although their movies suck these days. But that being said, they used to be good. Now they're bad. Matter of fact, they have a new movie coming out. I was watching Saturday Night Live. Something Web. That looks awful. I'm just guessing. I don't think it's going to make any money. I don't even understand it. But anyways, Marvel Technology is not that. These are a chip maker. And I have to say, my hat's off to Marvel for being able to lose money in this amazing business. Like, that's hard to do. Like, the industry is so good. They're really stinking it up. Okay? So besides this Marvell, everybody else is making money, and most are making pretty high returns, and most are creating value. That's the point. Why is this industry so much better than DraftKings? There's different parts of this industry that explain this. That's where we're going with this over the next couple of weeks. But this is the data that will help us start to draw those conclusions. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. That's cornerstone number one. All right. Cornerstone number two. It's about cash flow, not net income. Okay? Net income is like a pay stub. It tells you how much cash you're going to be paid, but it doesn't tell you how much cash is in the bank today. And if you run out of cash, bad things happen. So we care much more about cash flow than income. We also care about cash flow because of something called time value of money. When you get the cash, it changes its value. Right? Income doesn't adjust for that. So we tend to find that valuation is much more based on cash flow than income. Even though income tells us how much cash we'll eventually have, that timing difference really matters. And that's the point of the book. That's why we're going to focus so much on cash flow. Point number three, expectations. It's about the future. It's not about the past. I don't care how much money you made in 2022. I care much more about how much you're going to make in 2024. 2022 is gone. Okay? So future cash flows are much more important to valuation than historical cash flows. That's the difference between finance and accounting. Accountants look backwards. What did you do last month, last quarter, last year? Using the football metaphor. Whether you watched the games yesterday, Detroit, San Francisco, interesting game, 34-31 San Francisco. I don't care about that game anymore. I wasn't a fan of either team, but I don't care about that game. What I care about is the Super Bowl, San Francisco against the Chiefs. Who's going to win that game? That's more important today than who won yesterday. So celebrate your win, but if you're San Francisco, you got to go beat Kansas City. All right? That's the more important game. And today, who's going to win that game? Risk. Now, you can bet on it on DraftKings, but there's still gambling involved, and that's the whole point. When we deal with the future, we deal with uncertainty. But regardless, we still have to have some idea of what that future looks like if we're going to understand values of companies. You're worth the sum of your future cash flows. You're not worth your historical cash flows. That's why you can't use something like Yahoo Finance to do this class. Or what's the other data service the school uses where it has historical financial statements? Do you guys use any of those services? I haven't used them in years because they're kind of, to me, a waste of money. Like getting a data set, FactSet or whatever it's called, to get historical company data for NVIDIA doesn't matter because the market's not valuing NVIDIA on their last 5 years of profits. It's all about the next 5 years. And that's why a tool like Bloomberg is so valuable, because Bloomberg is one of the only tools in the world that gives you an understanding of what Wall Street thinks is the future of a company. And that's very valuable when we start to think about valuation. Okay? So, to put this into perspective, as I told a previous class, trivia. what was, I don't know if I did this with you last week, what was the best-selling drug in the world last year by revenue, not COVID-related? What was the best-selling drug in the world last year, not COVID, not a COVID drug? Yeah. It was what? It wasn't insulin. It wasn't Ozempic. It was actually something called Humira. Humira, sold by a company called AbbVie, is an anti-inflammatory drug. Matter of fact, if you go to Bloomberg, ABBVIE is AbbVie, and you go to MODL, AbbVie, and you go to MODL, these are the analyst spreadsheets that have been uploaded forecasting AbbVie, including a forecast by drug. And this is a single period. If I click on multiple periods, these are multiple years. And again, I can see the averages of all the analyst guesses. This is called the consensus estimates. When a sell-side analyst is forecasting a pharmaceutical, they don't just do top-line revenue. They know all the drugs they sell, so they're actually forecasting revenue by drug. So last year, Humira sold $21.2 billion worth of revenue, just that drug. And that drug was sold with a 90% plus gross margin. It was an amazingly profitable, cash-generating drug. Now, if you needed Humira, it was worth it, but this was the best-selling drug in the world last year. If I click over here, show me the future, where it goes to EST, these are the forecasts, all in white. So I can see that last year, Humira's actual was $21 billion. This year, 14.3, 9.2, 6.9, 5.6, and by 2027, 4.7 billion in sales. So the sales of this drug are going to drop by about 15 billion a year in the next 4 years. Why? Why are the sales for this drug plummeting? Yes.
Competition.
Why is there competition?
Because it's so profitable and so attractive like that.
Nope. The competition wanted to be here before. What changed? The patent expired. And when the patent expired, now the competition can come in. When the patent didn't expire, there was no competition. So that's the point. AbbVie has lost its competitive advantage. And now competition shows up, and this is pretty typical. A pharmaceutical company could lose 60 to 70% of their sales when their patent expires, right? And that's what's happening to AbbVie. So what I'm telling you is if I'm valuing AbbVie, I'm not celebrating the $21 billion of sales last year for the drug. I'm fretting about what are they going to do to replace $15 billion a year in sales and all the profits that go along with that in cash over the next few years. That is critical to their valuation. Now, if I scroll down a row, I see that they actually have another drug called Skyrizi. You might see some commercials for this. Last year sold $5 billion. By 2027, $15 billion. So Skyrizi is going to add about $10 billion in sales per year, but that's not enough to make off the $15 billion loss. They're still got a $5 billion gap. And I can go drug by drug and see how they're doing, but then I can also scroll down, and one of the unique features to pharmaceutical companies is you have to go through clinical trials to have a drug launched. This shows AbbVie's clinical trials. All the drugs are in phase 2, phase 3. They have a legitimate shot of going to market. So that's the point. There's not a surprise where they're just going to pop out of nowhere with a drug you've never heard of. It's got to go through clinical trials, and it's got to be approved by the FDA. So what I can look at is in 2027, what are the drugs in the pipeline now, and how much revenue do I see? Their most promising clinical trial drug will launch this year called ABBV-951, which will be $800 million a year by 2027. But if I look at all their drugs in their pipeline, add all these revenues up, pipeline ends right here. That's about $3 billion rounding off. I still don't see enough to cover the replacement for Humira. So if I'm sitting at JP Morgan and I'm in investment banking, this is when I call them and say, here's somebody you should be buying. It's exactly how M&A will start in the pharmaceutical industry. Because I know the patent cliffs, I know the revenue gaps, I can look to see at the pipeline if they replace it. It's hard to replace these kind of once-in-a-generation drugs, so AbbVie's going to be on the lookout for buying somebody. I already know that, okay? Matter of fact, I work with a company called Merck. Merck now has the best-selling drug in the world. Does anybody know what it's called? It has replaced Humira with more sales. Merck US Equity, MRK. It is called Keytruda. Keytruda cures cancer, literally. Right? It's immunotherapy for cancer. So instead of radiation or chemotherapy, which is awful, you can take Keytruda, uses your own immune system to fight the cancer, and for about 1 out of 3 people, it will literally cure the cancer, make it go away. The other 2 out of 3, you're still screwed, okay? But for 1 out of 3 people, it is life-changing, right? And all the companies are investing in these immunotherapies. It's still relatively new, but it's actually been very, very successful. You can see that Merck selling just this one drug last year was 21 billion, 20.9. This year, 25 billion. By 2027, Keytruda, just that drug, will be almost 34 billion in sales. Again, curing cancer. $100,000 per treatment. Okay? Very, very high gross margin. Again, probably above 90%. So they're making a killing on a cash flow basis on this cancer curing drug. Now, they spent a lot of money in R&D to get to this point, but the point is very, very profitable. If you read through what the analysts are saying about Merck, the questions are about 2028. On all the earnings calls, Merck, what are you going to do in 2028? Why do you think the market's asking about 2028?
Is that when the patent ends?
Because that's when the patent for Keytruda expires. And do you think they're going to maintain 34 billion a year in sales when that patent expires? No, they are not. Price is going to come down dramatically. So here's the point. 4 years from now, the patent expires. And the analysts aren't asking Merck about the next 4 years. They know they're the only game in town. It's just a question of can they make enough to sell to the demand. But in 4 years, the game's going to completely change. And so that's the point about valuation. We need to understand that, right? So on the other hand, you can't look at AbbVie in the past and understand why they're struggling today. You can't look at Merck's success and understand why Merck isn't even more successful with their share price, because the market's going beyond that and saying, what are you going to do to replace this? And it's hard to replace a blockbuster of this size. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. NVIDIA. Why is NVIDIA the first trillion-dollar company? NVDA. Because last year, NVIDIA had $27 billion worth of actual revenue. And if I scroll down, operating profit of $9 billion. Okay? And I'm telling you, if you look at $9 billion of profit, there's no way you translate that with any perpetuity to a $1 trillion valuation. You just can't. Can't do the math. So you're probably looking at this saying, how could they possibly trade at the PE they're trading at? It doesn't make any sense. Well, because 2028 forecast for NVIDIA is revenue will go from 27 billion last year to an expected 157 billion in 1 year of revenue, and more importantly, 91.2 billion in profit for just 1 year. Now, 90 billion in profit into a $1 trillion valuation, that's a PE of 12. That's more understandable. And that's the point. NVIDIA is not being valued on what they've done, it's what they're about to do. And by the way, where is all this growth coming from? Scroll up here. It's not from their gaming chips. Their gaming chips are going from 9 billion of revenue to 16 billion of revenue over the next 4 years. Now, don't get me wrong, for any company, growing that fast would be pretty darn good. Their data center revenue is going from 15 billion a year to 134 billion a year. It's all the chips that Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and Cloudflare and the others are buying, because that's where we're processing AI. We're processing in the cloud, not in the device. And they make the chip for the cloud. So that's the point. That's the growth. That's the bet. Now, don't get me wrong. Every other chip company is trying to do this, from Intel to Microsoft to Amazon, even building proprietary chips, because like I don't want to buy the NVIDIA chips if I can build my own proprietary chips. But they haven't figured that out yet, and this is what's expected. And so it's not guaranteed, but you start to understand, like, why are they a $1 trillion company? You start to get understanding. Future, much more important than the past. That's the third cornerstone, and probably the most important cornerstone we're going to use this semester. Questions? Fourth cornerstone, competitive advantage. Also known as sustainability of advantage. The question is no longer, do companies have competitive advantage? The question is how long? How long does it last? And do you have a what's next? That's what's much more important than competitive advantage. So back to Merck. I know Merck has an amazing competitive advantage on a drug that cures cancer and saves people's lives. But I know that financially in 5 years it's going to go away. So that's the point. I got to understand that when I do the valuation. I can't just assume that they're just going to go on to infinity and beyond basically because they have a really good product right now. No one's product lasts forever, no matter what you do. Even Apple, as good as the iPhone is, it's not going to be dominant 20 years from now. I don't know what it is, but it's not going to be the iPhone. It will be something else. The market's going to change. Because when you were 5 years old, there was a product called the BlackBerry, which was the iPhone of the day. And if you talk to people about that going away, they'd have looked at you like you were nuts. Yet today, the company doesn't even exist anymore. And what I'm telling you is competitive advantage is transient. We got to recognize that. So what we're trying to understand is how good is your market? How long will that last? How good is your advantage? How long does that last? And do you have a what's next? Because if your big product goes away, do you have something to replace it? Right? Now, if you don't, I can go sell you and get somebody else, but I'm still going to try and understand that. So when we do EIC, that's part of the EIC. That's the C. That's the competitive advantage. Do you have an advantage? Why? And how long will it last? We got to make some forecasts on this because when we model out companies, that's going to be important to the valuation. Industry, competition, nothing lasts forever. In the book, there are 2 charts. One shows a buy and hold strategy of top performing ROICs and what happens over time, and the other shows growth and what happens over time. What the charts show is regression to the mean. No matter what industry McKinsey looked at, there was always regression to the mean. Nothing lasts forever. Just so happens that growth regresses to the mean for big companies faster than ROIC, but that's the whole idea. That's what needs to be burned in the back of your brain. Nothing lasts forever. Even beyond this class, nothing lasts forever. No matter how good something is, it won't last forever. And that's where companies get misvalued because people assume that it does. Tesla, latest example, right? Disastrous earnings call last week. Why? What happened with Tesla? What's the train wreck of Tesla? We started talking about in this class last semester. It's now proven true in their last quarterly earnings. What happened?
Does it have something to do with the Cybertrucks?
It's not the Cybertrucks. I'm not saying that didn't help them. The message of the Cybertrucks is not what's helped them. It's something worse, yeah.
Wasn't there like a mass recall of their
It's
cars
not
because of
the mass
that?
recall and the fact that they've been hiding data about the self-driving that's killing a bunch of people. That's all bad. But what was the real problem with Tesla last week? Which caused their share price, when they announced their earnings, to go from, I'll do 1 month. Try to do 1 month. There it is. Their share price a month ago was $250. Today it's $188. And when they announced their earnings, it went from $210 to mid 180s. Why? Why was Tesla so valuable? What do you think? Yeah.
They were like the main dominant force in selling electric cars, but now a lot of other companies.
And the main dominant force of electric cars, as the electric car market went up, they were going to sell a lot of electric cars, right? So that's the problem. See all these red lines? This is a summary of the model. It's called EEO. Just summarizes all the models. You have to go through all the line items. You know what these red lines mean? Red line down? That means in the last 30 days, the analysts have lowered their averages. They lowered their averages on everything. Because what Musk had to admit is that EV sales are not going to be as big as we thought. Not as fast. That if you think about the product life cycle, we're going from the early adopters to the early majority, and the early majority is not as interested in an electric car. I represent the early majority. I have no interest in electric cars, right? I've tried renting them. I rented one. I was doing a class in Cupertino for a company, and I brought my girlfriend out, and we spent the weekend after going to Cupertino in wine country, so we went to Sonoma, and we rented a Tesla, because I wanted to see what it'd be like to have a Tesla for the weekend. It was awful. And the reason it was awful is because in Sonoma, in wine country for California, we couldn't find any open electric chargers. And the whole time we were paranoid, like, how are we going to charge this damn thing? Because literally at our hotel, there were two chargers. And all of the area that we were going looking for cars, there were 2 or 3 in the parking lots randomly around. And it's California, by the way. And what's worse is when you charge a Tesla, you can literally put it in and go away. So you don't even know when the owner's coming back to take their car back. And so the whole time we're like watching the percentages go down to like 30 and 20 and 15. We can't charge the car, and we're like completely freaked out about this. And we're thinking about, do we have enough juice if we can't find a charger to get back to San Francisco Airport? And I'm like, I'm not going to own this friggin' thing. It's just too much complication. And when we did find a supercharger, number one, it took like 45 minutes to charge the damn car. And Hertz, where we're renting it from, said if you didn't bring it back 70% charged, we're going to charge you $70. And when we did use the supercharger, it still charged us $40. So I'm like, this isn't saving money via gas. Matter of fact, it's just as expensive as the gas. It takes a lot longer to charge. You're manic about trying to find a supercharger if you're not at home that's not full. I'm thinking, this is California. I think Maryland's any better or worse. Louisiana, Mississippi, like they don't even have chargers out there. So that's the point. Like, this is now the mass market that everybody's supposed to be buying these electric cars to, and we don't have the infrastructure. And so now we're going to the next stage of all these cars, and people are starting to go like, nope, hybrids. We're going to buy hybrids. And that's exactly what's happening. And so Tesla is now having trouble. Then they're having the other troubles that you just mentioned. They got software, which is killing people, that they're not reporting. They got Cybertrucks, where they're having trouble getting manufacturing on that. And then they just have a market which is struggling. I'm not saying they're not going to grow, but are they going to grow as fast? And now the competition's here. And by the way, the competition's having trouble selling their electric cars too. Mercedes, they can't give them away. Nobody wants the high-end Mercedes SUVs. They are discounting them $10,000 and $15,000 below list price right now because nobody wants them. All right? I'd rather buy a hybrid than at a high end for a luxury car than an SUV. Now, there's a few early adopters, but we burned through them, and there was just an assumption. This was crossing the chasm, all right, if you ever read that book. But the whole idea is, was it Gladwell? Who wrote that book? Innovator's Dilemma. You ever read The Innovator's Dilemma? This is exactly what they talked about in The Innovator's Dilemma and how you have to cross the chasm to get to the mass market. And we made an assumption that the EV world was going to get there. I'm not so sure. By the way, we have an election in 2024. And if the Republicans win and the dictator takes over, he doesn't favor electric vehicles. He's going to shut it all down. All right. So what I'm telling you is, in any scenario, it's not going to be as big as we thought, not nearly as fast. All right. Questions, comments, concerns, crippling fears about any of this? This is about as far as we got in the previous classes. We're going to stop here in just a second and pick up on Wednesday with the math. Okay? Because there's a lot of math behind what we do, and this is a finance class. So the math will start on the next slide. And the math is called key value drivers, or KVD. And this is what summarizes the math that we have been talking about. But I will tell you that starting Wednesday, we're going to get beyond the summary and get into the actual formulas. Okay? So there's a lot of math that supports this. So essentially, this is where we're going to pick up. So between now and Wednesday, here are your tasks. If you don't have an account, make sure you get a Bloomberg account. You should start your Bloomberg certification, BMC, start the portal, get at least the account for that, and teams. If you're not in a team, pick a team. So here's where you get the teams. In Elms, under People, there's a sub-tab called 443 Teams. You have to be registered for a team that is in your section. You're in section 301. So 301 team 1 through 301 team 6. You can't have more than 8 people on a team, but you must be on a team by Wednesday. So for example, here's a team that's already has 7 people. Here's a team that's got 5 people, 4 people, right? You can join the team with 4 people. You don't have to ask their permission. But what's going to happen is, if you're not on a team by Wednesday morning, I'm putting you on a team, because the Bloomberg Trading Challenge starts Wednesday afternoon. So between now and then, either choose a team or be assigned to a team. See you on Wednesday. We'll take attendance for the first time on Wednesday. No attendance today.